"Mom, please don't marry him." The words fell like thunder inside the chapel. Everything stopped. The music, the whispers, even the gentle clinking of silverware from the reception tables out back all vanished the moment Eli spoke. All eyes turned toward the aisle, where a 9-year-old black boy stood alone, his small frame dwarfed by a navy suit that hung slightly loose around the shoulders. His fists were clenched at his sides, and his voice, though soft, was clear as crystal. Maya Williams stood frozen at the altar, a bouquet of ivory peonies trembling in her grip, her eyes locked onto her son, the boy she'd adopted from a rundown orphanage outside Jackson, Mississippi, the boy who had taught her more about loyalty than any man ever had. Now he was standing in front of 140 guests, interrupting her wedding with a single sentence. "Eli," she whispered, barely audible. He took a step forward, walking down the aisle with the quiet steadiness of someone who knew the weight of what he carried. His eyes never left hers. Behind Maya, Darius Cole shifted uncomfortably. The 42-year-old business mantle, striking and polished, wore a faint smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His gaze flicked toward the guests, then back to Maya. He didn't say a word. From the first pew, Margaret, Maya's mother, stood slowly. Her silver curls framed a face carved with experience and a hard-earned gentleness. "Let the boy speak," she said firmly. Eli stopped a few feet from the altar. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small smartwatch, his favorite gadget, battered from years of fiddling and repairs. He tapped the screen, then held it up. The tiny speaker crackled to life. A man's voice came through, low, familiar, and unmistakable. "Look, babe, I've got her wrapped around my finger. It's just a matter of time. She trusts me. She loves me. That's what makes it easy. She won't ask questions." A pause, then a woman's voice, sultry and amused. "You sure? She doesn't seem stupid." The man laughed, a dry, confident sound. "She's not stupid. She's in love. That's all I need. Once this thing ships out and clears, we're good. No invoices, no signatures. One clean handoff, and I'm out." Eli looked up, his hand shaking now but his voice steady. "That's his voice. I recorded it this morning, right before the ceremony. He was in the den, talking on speakerphone. He didn't know I was in the hallway behind the couch." A gasp rippled through the room. Maya blinked slowly. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She turned her head toward Darius, but didn't speak. "Not yet." Darius chuckled lightly. "Okay, wow. So now I'm being accused of what? Smuggling? Sweetheart, this is absurd. You really think I'd say something like that out loud? In your house?" "I don't think," Eli said, his small frame tense. "I know. You said you were using her trust. You said the shipment had no paperwork." A few guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of the groomsmen looked down at his shoes. Someone near the back whispered, "Was that really him?" Maya's mouth was dry. Her hand slowly loosened around the bouquet, and a few petals dropped to the floor. Margaret stepped forward. "Maya, you heard what I did." Darius held out his hands in mock surrender. "It's a setup. It's a damn misunderstanding. The boy doesn't know what he heard." Maya's voice came, thin but sharp. "That woman on the recording, who is she?" He hesitated. Just for a beat. But in a room this quiet, a beat was everything. "I don't know," he said too quickly. Eli stepped closer. "You called her babe. You said once the shipment cleared, you'd be out." "Out of what?" Darius scoffed. "He's 9 years old. He's probably been watching too many spy shows." Maya stared at him, but her eyes had gone distant. Her mind was racing backward, connecting dots she hadn't dared connect before the late-night phone calls, the secretive business trips, the vague answers about supply chain issues. "You told me there was nothing off the books," she said quietly. "There isn't." That was your voice. "It's not proof." "It's enough," she said. "Enough to make me stop this." Darius's face darkened. "So that's it? You're going to ruin this because a kid waved a toy in the air?" Eli flinched, but Maya stepped forward, placing herself between them. "Don't raise your voice to my son." "Your son?" Darius barked. "He's not even." But he stopped himself. That silence was louder than anything he could have said. Eli didn't move. He stood still, defiant, breathing hard. His small hand clenched the watch until his knuckles paled. "I didn't want to ruin anything," he said, voice cracking. "I just wanted you to know, before it was too late." And just like that, Maya saw everything. Every choice she'd made to ignore the little things. Every moment she'd told herself Darius was just busy, just misunderstood, just trying. All the pieces shifted into place. She dropped the bouquet. It hit the floor with a dull, final thud. "Eli," she said softly, "you did the right thing." From the back, someone stood up. Others followed. It wasn't chaos. Not yet, but it was unraveling. The illusion was falling apart in real time. And then, without warning, Darius turned and walked briskly down the aisle, brushing past guests, shoving a shoulder into one of the groomsmen. Margaret moved quickly to Eli, placing a steady hand on his shoulder. Maya stood there, alone at the altar, her heart cracking open as truth bled in. And in the center of it all, the voice of a child had just saved her life. Maya stood in silence, surrounded by whispers, wary glances, and truths crashing down like waves. But in her heart, she saw only one thing: her son small, brave, and right. It was a moment she would remember for the rest of her life. Take a moment. What are your thoughts on this boy's courage? Leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. The doors to the chapel creaked closed behind Darius, but the tension he left behind still clung to the walls like smoke. Maya didn't move. Her bouquet lay at her feet like a fallen truth, petals crushed under the silence. Eli stood beside Margaret now, his watch still clutched in his hand. The recording long stopped, but its echo still thundering in everyone's mind. Outside, the sky had shifted. The clouds, once clear and proud above Savannah's golden sun, now gathered like a slow reckoning. A breeze drifted through the oak trees that lined the church's southern lawn, rattling the Spanish moss as if whispering, "It's not over." Maya stepped down from the altar slowly, her heels silent on the old wood. Her legs moved like they were no longer hers. The guests parted for her, unsure if they should offer sympathy or just get out of her way. She passed through them without a glance. When she reached the door, she didn't go outside immediately. She paused, her fingers wrapped around the phone in her clutch. She looked down at it. Her reflection stared back in the black screen, eyes wide, mouth slightly parted, a woman between belief and betrayal. Margaret came up beside her. "He's still out there. Cars still in the parking lot." Maya nodded once. "I'm calling." "Who?" "Detective Simone, my cousin's friend. She works organized crime in Atlanta." Maya's voice cracked, but she didn't stop. "If even half of that recording is real, this isn't just heartbreak, it's federal." Margaret nodded. "Make the call. I'll stay with Eli." Maya stepped out into the afternoon light. The wind tugged at the sheer fabric of her veil, half unpinned, now fluttering like a ghost behind her. Her heels clicked down the steps. She looked around, no sign of Darius, but she could feel him nearby, watching, calculating. She sat down on a wrought iron bench near the rose garden and dialed. The line rang once, twice. "Simone Ortega." The voice on the other end answered, clipped and professional. "Simone, it's Maya William. I need you to listen to me carefully." "Maya?" A pause, then softer. "You sound, what's going on?" Maya didn't waste time. "There's a man named Darius Cole. He's at my wedding, or he was. My son recorded a conversation this morning. Darius admitted to using me, and more importantly, to smuggling untraceable goods. No invoices, no signatures. He said it's clearing today. He's using my address." Simone's tone shifted instantly. "Do you have the recording?" "I do. I can send it now." "Do it. And Maya, don't confront him. Don't go near him again." "It's too late for that." Maya hung up and sent the file before her hands could start shaking again. Then she sat, gripping the edge of the bench until her knuckles went white. Inside the chapel, Eli sat alone near the side aisle, staring at the stained glass window of an angel holding a sword. He looked smaller now, his shoulders curled in, as if the weight of what he'd done was starting to settle. Margaret sat beside him, not saying anything, just being there. "He's mad at me," Eli whispered. "No, baby," she said. "He's not. He looked like he wanted to scream. He looked like he got caught." Margaret corrected. "There's a difference." Eli nodded, but his eyes stayed on the colored glass. "Do you think Mom still wants me to stay with her?" Margaret turned fully to him. "Eli, listen to me. Your mother didn't walk away from a wedding today. She walked toward you." He blinked fast, trying not to cry. He was tough. He had to be. Kids in the orphanage didn't get to cry much. Outside, Maya re-entered the chapel. Her face was tight, now controlled. She walked with new weight in her step, the kind that came when denial burned away and only clarity remained. She walked straight to Eli. He looked up at her, nervous. "I'm sorry. You don't ever have to apologize for protecting the people you love," she said. She knelt, hugged him close. "You didn't ruin anything. You saved me. You saved both of us." Eli clutched her hard, pressing his forehead to her shoulder. "I thought maybe you'd still want to marry him. I only want people in our lives who see you, respect you, and never lie to us." A low murmur rippled from the back of the chapel. Someone had re-entered. It was Reggie Klein-Darius's business associate and longtime golfing buddy. He walked slowly down the aisle, holding something in his hand, a sleek black envelope. "Maya," he said, eyes a little wide, voice cautious. "I don't want to overstep, but I think you need to see this." She stood slowly. "What is it?" "Something I found in Darius's car. He left his driver's side door open when he stormed out. I went to talk him down. He wasn't there, but this was sitting on the seat." He handed it to her. Maya opened it. Inside were shipping documents, fake ones, half completed. The return address? Her own home. The recipient? A shell company based in Tennessee. The items? MISC. Electronics. Bulk. No invoices. No tracking. Only initials. DC. His stomach dropped. "You ever seen anything like that?" Reggie asked. "No," Maya said. "But I think I just saw enough." She looked at Reggie. "Thank you for bringing this. Did he say where he was going?" "He was on his phone. Said something about Plan B and needing to clean up the mess. He didn't look calm." Maya nodded. "You should leave. I'm going to forward this to the police." Reggie hesitated. "Do you think he'll come back?" "I think," Maya said slowly, "he already regrets not finishing what he started." A sharp knock echoed through the chapel doors. Everyone turned. This time, it wasn't Darius. It was Detective Simone Ortega, flanked by a uniformed officer. She walked in, eyes scanning the room until they landed on Maya. "We need to talk. Outside." Maya followed her back out into the wind. "We ran the voice sample through initial filters," Simone said quietly. "It's a match, and it's not the first time his name has come up. There's a cold file in Birmingham with a similar MO shipping through shell companies, using personal relationships to cover the trail." Maya's jaw clenched. "What do you need from me?" "Your full cooperation, a written statement, that envelope, and if you're willing, a search of your home. He may have planted devices or routing slips. Take whatever you need." Simone nodded. "And Maya, I'm sorry. I know this isn't how you wanted your day to end." Maya looked back at the chapel, where her guests still lingered, whispering. The flowers were still in bloom, the cake untouched, the violinist sitting in silence with his bow across his knees. "I didn't come here to start a marriage," she said quietly. "Turns out I came here to end a lie." Inside, Margaret gathered their things while guests slowly began to leave. Some offered hugs, others avoided eye contact. But no one dared speak against what had just happened. Eli stood with his watch in his hand, looking toward the door. Maya returned, knelt again. "You hungry?" He hesitated. "A little. Want to get pancakes?" His eyes brightened. "Really?" "Really, with whipped cream, and sprinkles if they have it." He grinned. "Even with sprinkles?" "Especially with sprinkles." They walked out hand in hand, down the same aisle that minutes ago held such promise, now transformed into something far more powerful, a path to truth. Not perfection, not happy, ever after, but something real. Behind them, the chapel lights dimmed, the wind picked up again, and somewhere, far across the city, a man was running not from a child, not from a wedding, but from the justice that child had just set in motion. The little bell above the door jingled as Maya and Eli stepped into Rosie's Dinera, cozy, no-frills joint tucked into a quiet corner off Oglethorpe Avenue. The scent of sizzling bacon, cinnamon waffles, and coffee thick enough to chew hung in the air like a blanket. The place hadn't changed in 30 years. Red vinyl booths, checkered floors, a jukebox that still played Patsy Cline, and the same laminated menus that curled at the corners. The waitress, a wiry woman in her late 60s named Marla, looked up from behind the counter. She recognized Maya instantly. "Well, aren't you supposed to be off honeymooning somewhere, Sonny?" she asked, a half-joke resting on her lips, but something in Maya's eyes made her pause. "We'll just take a booth, Marla," Maya said gently, her voice low. Marla nodded, saying no more. She motioned to the back corner, their usual spot. It was the booth Maya used to sit in with her late husband when they first moved to Savannah. The same booth where, 3 years ago, she'd brought a freshly adopted little boy for his first American breakfast. Eli had eaten 4 stacks of pancakes that morning and kept asking what real syrup meant. Now he slid into the booth quietly, holding his watch in both hands as if it were something sacred. Maya sat across from him, exhaling slowly as she set down her phone. For a long moment they didn't speak, just sat in the warm clatter of forks, dishes, and coffee pots around them. The world outside was unraveling, but in here it was safe. Marla returned a minute later with 2 glasses of orange juice and a notepad. "You want the usual, kiddo?" Eli nodded. "And you?" she asked Maya. "Same." Marla didn't push further. She scribbled quickly and disappeared into the kitchen. Maya leaned forward, folding her hands. "How are you holding up?" Eli shrugged. "Okay, I guess. I didn't mean to make everyone mad." "They're not mad, baby. They're shocked. There's a difference." He looked up. "Will Darius go to jail?" Maya paused, then answered truthfully. "Maybe. He might run first, but Simone and her team are tracking him, and I'm going to give them everything I have. You helped stop something dangerous, Eli." He looked away. "I just didn't want you to get hurt. You did more than that. You protected both of us." Marla returned with 2 steaming plates of pancakes, the butter melting slow into the ridges, syrup on the side, just the way Eli liked it. She also set down a can of whipped cream without asking. Maya smiled her thanks. Eli didn't say much but quietly arranged the food with the care of someone trying to hold on to normalcy. He swirled the syrup into a spiral before pouring it slowly over the stack. Halfway through the second pancake, he looked up. "Do you think he picked you because you're kind?" Maya tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "He said on the phone that you were easy to lie to, that you trusted too fast. Is that because you help people?" It hit her in the chest, deeper than she expected. "I think people like him look for those who love with both hands," she said quietly. "People who lead with their hearts. It doesn't mean you're weak. It just means you haven't learned to expect the worst yet." Eli nodded slowly. "But I did." "You did?" He put his fork down and leaned back. "Can I ask something?" "Anything. Do you ever think, maybe I shouldn't have come to live with you? That maybe you'd be safer alone?" Her breath caught. "Eli, look at me." "I did. You being with me is the only thing that's been real since I lost your dad. You gave me something bigger than just work and to-do lists. You gave me back family." He swallowed hard. "Even with the mess I caused?" "You didn't cause the mess. You saw it. You said something, and you saved us from being buried in it. I will never be sorry that you're my son." His face didn't change, but his eyes welled. He wiped them quickly with a napkin and took another bite like nothing had happened. It was his way. Quiet strength. Maya checked her phone. 2 missed calls. One from Simone. One from an unknown number. She dialed Simone first. "Hey," Simone answered quickly. "We found his car. Abandoned near a Greyhound station off I-95. Surveillance shows him getting on a bus headed west." Maya's stomach dropped. "Did he take anything with him?" "A laptop bag and what looked like a black case. No confirmed ID yet, but we're pulling manifest logs. Good news is there was a USB drive in the car's glove box, loaded with transaction records, fake IDs, and a few scanned passports. He slipped, probably in a hurry." Maya closed her eyes. "Will it be enough?" "It's building. If we can tie it back to a known smuggling chain, he's looking at years. Let me know what else you need." "One more thing," Simone added. "Your son. He did something brave. Don't let anyone spin that the wrong way." "I won't," Maya whispered. After she hung up, she looked across the booth. "They found him. He's running." Eli's brow furrowed. "Will he come back?" "Not if we do this right. The more we speak, the less room he has to hide." Eli nodded. "I'm not scared." "I know." They sat quietly for another few minutes. Marla refilled Maya's coffee without asking and winked at Eli before walking away. The diner had started to thin out, Only a few locals remained, talking about football and city council decisions no one really agreed with. Then Maya's phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. She answered. At first, no one spoke. Then a voice she hadn't heard since that morning. Cold, controlled, low. Maya. Her chest tightened. Darius. I hope you know you just ruined everything. Years of work, people who depended on me. All gone because of a kid and a recorder. You lied to me. You used my name, my home, and you put my son at risk. I never touched the boy. You used him, she snapped. Don't you dare pretend you didn't. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I gave you the life you said you missed. You gave me a performance, and I almost let you steal my peace. You're going to regret this, he said flatly. No, she said, steel creeping into her voice. I'm going to rebuild. He hung up. Eli watched her face. Was that him? Yes. And that's the last time he'll ever speak to us again. He exhaled. Good. Maya flagged Marla down and paid in cash. As they walked toward the door, the late afternoon sun poured through the glass like gold. Maya opened the door and stepped aside for Eli to exit first. He looked up at her, eyes steady. You sure you're okay? He asked. She smiled. I'm okay because you are. Outside, the city moved like it always had, cars passing, people laughing down the block, life rushing forward. But for Maya and Eli, it wasn't just another day. It was the start of a new chapter, one built not on appearances or arrangements but on trust earned the hard way. As they walked to the car, Eli slipped his hand into hers. She gripped it tight and didn't let go. Not this time. Not ever again. The rain began just as they turned onto their street. Not the kind that swept in with fanfare, but a slow, quiet drizzle that painted the windshield in soft gray streaks. Maya flicked on the wipers, her mind a whirlpool of memory and calculation. Eli sat in the passenger seat, buckled in but leaning slightly toward the window, watching the raindrops race down the glass. He hadn't said much since they left the diner. She didn't push him. Silence, between them, wasn't always emptiness, it was often trust. As the car eased into the driveway, Maya's eyes narrowed. Something was off. The porch light usually set on a timer was off, and the mailbox, normally shut, hung slightly ajar. She put the car in park but didn't move. Eli, she said quietly, wait here. His head snapped toward her. Why? I just want to check something. He frowned. You think he was here? I think I'd rather be sure than sorry. She stepped out slowly, one hand in her coat pocket, gripping the small pepper spray canister she'd carried since college. Her heels tapped lightly on the wet pavement. The sky had gone darker now, the street lamps flickering on one by one like a nervous applause. Her eyes scanned the porch. The mat was crooked. The side table shifted slightly, the kind of differences that someone else might ignore. Maya didn't. She moved to the door and tried the knob. Still locked. That was either good news or someone had relocked it. She stepped back and turned to the car. Eli was watching through the window, his face pale. Maya nodded once, signaling him to stay put. Then she opened her purse and dialed Simone. Ortega. It's Maya. I just got home. Something's off. Define off. Porch light out. Mailbox open. Mat moved. Door still locked but looks like it was touched. You go in? Number. Good. Stay out. I'm sending a unit. Maya hung up and returned to the car, slid back into the driver's seat. There's going to be a police car coming, she said calmly. We're going to wait here until they clear the house. Eli nodded slowly, but his hands fidgeted in his lap. You think he came back? I think Darius underestimated how far we'd go. 15 minutes later, 2 patrol cars rolled up in quiet sync. Officers stepped out, one male, one female, both with calm, measured movements. Maya exited and explained what she'd seen. They swept the house, first around the perimeter, then inside. The male officer returned first. No one inside, he said. But you were right to call. Back window was cracked open and relocked from inside. Mud prints on the sill. Maya felt the cold settle in her spine. The female officer handed over a small Ziploc bag. We found this on your kitchen counter. Inside it, folded neatly, was a typed note. You should have kept your mouth shut. Eli, now standing beside her, read it. His fingers tightened around hers. Maya nodded at the officers. Can I still stay here tonight? Legally, yes. But if you have somewhere else you can go, it wouldn't hurt. I'll think about it. The officers left after dusting the sill for prints and logging the note into evidence. Once they were gone, Maya unlocked the front door, walked in slowly, and turned on every light. The house smelled the same clean, warm, but she could feel something in the air, like the weight of someone's breath had just recently left. Eli followed her in, pausing just inside the entryway. I don't like it here right now. I know, she said. Me neither. She double-checked the locks, then unplugged the house alarm and reset it with a new code. After a moment's hesitation, she opened a closet near the hallway and pulled out a small fireproof box. Inside were 2 passportures and a Lisa checkbook, some cash, and a USB drive. Darius had once insisted she keep for backups. She held the drive in her hand and stared at it. Should we give that to Detective Simone? Eli asked. We will, she said, but I want to look first. They sat together on the living room couch, the rain tapping harder now against the windows. Maya opened her laptop, plugged in the drive, and waited. At first, it looked like nothing, just a few folders labeled innocuously, Home Budget, Q1, Payroll, and Invoice Archive. But when she opened the archive folder, she found spreadsheets, dozens. Hidden among them was a subfolder titled Blind Transfer. No password, no encryption. Inside were records dates, amounts, account numbers, wire transfers to places she'd never heard of, Panama, Belize, the Isle of Man, and her name used as a reference line on more than one transaction. He used you, Eli whispered. Maya nodded. He used this address, my signature, probably my tax ID. She clicked on one file labeled Client List, Export.csv, names, notes, comments. The remarks chilled her. Widowed, owns property, trusts easily, in process of emotional rebound, will not question delays. There she was. Client 112. Maya William. Tears welled behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. She copied everything onto her own encrypted drive, then removed the USB and dropped it back into the fireproof box. We'll bring this to Simone in the morning. Eli's eyes hadn't left the screen. Are we still safe here? We will be. Tonight we sleep with one eye open. Tomorrow we move forward. That night, Maya didn't sleep in her room. She laid out a blanket on the couch, and Eli curled up beside her, his head on her shoulder, a book about space tucked under his arm but never opened. She kept one hand on his back, and the other on the pepper spray under the pillow. The rain never stopped. Sometime around 2 a.m., she heard a car drive slowly past the house, then pull away. She didn't move. At 3:45, a neighbor's motion light flicked on. At 4:12, Eli stirred, mumbled something, then nestled closer. By dawn, Maya was still awake, but something had settled inside her, not fear, not anger, but certainty. Darius had underestimated her. He thought love made her blind, but he'd forgotten one thing. Love, when it's real, makes you fight harder. By 7 a.m., Maya had already made coffee and packed a bag for her and Eli. Not to run, but to move temporarily into her mother's house. Margaret would understand. She'd already called and left a message the night before. Simone texted just after sunrise. Meet me at 9. Bring the drive. We're opening a case. Maya showed the text to Eli as he munched on cereal. He gave a small, tired smile. Good, he said. Let's finish it. And they would. Because sometimes, even in the rain, the road to justice starts right at your own front door. The federal building in downtown Savannah rose like a solemn block of gray against the morning mist. Its facade was plain, functional, and unimpressed by the emotions carried in by the people who passed through its doors. Maya had been here once before, years ago, when she'd volunteered for a community outreach program. That time, she'd carried brochures and hope. This time, she carried a hard drive and the truth. She stepped out of the Uber with Eli by her side, the boy's small hand folded tightly in hers. He wore a hoodie pulled up over his head despite the warmth, a subtle shield from the world. Maya carried a tote bag slung over her shoulder, the fireproof case tucked neatly inside, along with every document she could gather, emails, printouts, and the flash drive she'd copied from Darius's stash. Detective Simone Ortega met them at the entrance. Her brown trench coat was open, badge clipped at her belt, and her tone was all business. But her eyes, when they met Maya's, were steady with something else respect. "You ready?" she asked. Maya nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." They were led through a metal detector, past silent portraits of stern-looking men in suits, and into a private conference room on the 3rd floor. The walls were bare except for a whiteboard, a phone, and a flag in the corner. The table was long, oak, and too polished. It made Maya feel exposed. Eli sat beside her, fidgeting with the strap of his backpack. Simone placed a recorder on the table and hit the red button. "For the record," she began, "this is a voluntary witness statement from Maya William regarding the ongoing investigation into Darius Cole, case number 785, ZN. She nodded at Maya. Maya took a breath and opened the bag, sliding the drive across the table. "Everything is here. Copies of the transactions I found, the folder labeled blind transfer and client notes. He used my name to move things. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "We believe you," Simone said calmly. "There are patterns in the data. Some of these accounts match with flagged entities from past stings. But this," she tapped the drive, "might be the link we've been missing." Maya sat back, her shoulders tight. How long had he been doing this? "We're still mapping the full timeline, but initial reviews show activity going back at least 18 months, possibly longer. What's clear is that he's used multiple women, mostly widowed or recently divorced, all with assets, all emotionally vulnerable." Maya closed her eyes. "That's what I was." "No," Simone said. "That's what he thought you were." Eli glanced up at her, quiet but alert. He hadn't spoken since they entered. Simone turned her gaze to him. "You okay, Ellie?" He nodded. "You were very brave." He looked at the recorder, then at Maya. "Can I say something?" Simone smiled slightly. "Go ahead." Eli leaned forward. He told someone on the phone that she didn't ask questions. But she did. He just lied, and she kept trusting him. That's not dumb. That's love. Maya felt something shift in her chest, like a wound she hadn't even named was finally recognized. Simone nodded. "Thank you, Eli. That's important." They spent the next hour going through the files. Simone brought in a forensic tech to start cloning the data. Maya answered question after question about dates, habits, receipts, bank accounts, conversations that now held new meaning under the light of suspicion. She told them everything. By 11 a.m., her throat was dry and her nerves were frayed. Eli had drawn quiet again, his head resting against Maya's shoulder, his hand now loosely holding hers under the table. Simone closed her notepad. "That's enough for today. We'll let you know as soon as we get a warrant for his business office and storage unit. In the meantime, stay at your mom's, keep your phone close, and don't go anywhere alone." Maya nodded. As they stood, Simone walked them out. Just before they reached the lobby, she stopped. "There's something else you should know. I wasn't going to tell you until we were certain, but you deserve to hear it." Maya paused. "What is it?" "We ran Darius's alias history through a few old cases. There's a match-in unsolved fraud ring out of Miami, 3 years ago. A woman disappeared after reporting him. No one's seen her since. Her name was on one of the notes you found in the drive." Maya swallowed hard. "So we're not just talking money anymore," Simone continued. "If he feels cornered, he could be dangerous." Maya's voice was tight. "He already is." Simone held her gaze. "And he knows you know that now." They left the building and took another ride share to Margaret's house on the south end of Tona, white 2-story colonial, with ivy on the fence and a swing on the porch. It was the house Maya grew up in, and as they pulled up, a wave of fatigue swept through her. The comfort of home wasn't in the walls, it was in the certainty that someone would open the door when you knocked. Margaret did, before Maya even raised her hand. "You look like you've walked through a storm," she said, pulling Maya into a hug. Then she bent and hugged Eli, tight and quiet. They settled into the living room, where Margaret had already set out fresh towels, a stack of blankets, and a tray of lemon cookies. She didn't ask what had happened. Not yet. She just listened as Maya recounted the morning, the files, the missing woman, the investigation. Margaret sat back, her hands folded in her lap. This man built a world around pretending to be real. That's the worst kind of monster. Maya looked at Eli, who had curled up on the couch, one arm under his head. His eyes were open but distant. Margaret followed her gaze. "He'll carry this longer than he should have to." "I know," Maya whispered, "but I'll carry it with him." Later that afternoon, as the sky cleared, Maya stepped out onto the porch with a cup of tea. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A message from an unknown number. "You think you're safe now? You're not. I don't disappear." She stared at the screen, lips pressing into a tight line. Then she typed back without hesitation. "You should have run farther." She blocked the number and walked back inside. Eli was sitting with Margaret at the table, playing a quiet game of cards. The sunlight streamed in through the windows, casting soft gold across the walls. For the first time in days, Maya didn't feel like prey. She felt like the one still standing, the one still watching, and the one who would never be blindsided again. The wind had shifted by morning. It rolled through the streets of Savannah like something trying to speak. Maya stood at the kitchen sink, staring into her tea as if answers might surface from the swirling honey. Margaret was out back pruning her garden, and Eli sat at the kitchen table drawing quietly with colored pencils. Birds chirped beyond the window, blissfully unaware of the tension that had gripped the house like a vice. Maya's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. No message this time, just silence. She let it ring until it stopped, then placed it face down on the counter. She wasn't going to let fear startle her anymore. If Darius wanted to play intimidation games, he was late to the party. She'd already decided there was no going back. She turned to Eli. "Hey, champ, want to come with me to the shop?" Eli looked up. "Your shop?" Maya nodded. "I need to grab a few things. And check the books." Eli put down his pencil. "Okay. Will there be muffins?" "There better be, or I'm firing myself." By 9:30 a.m., they arrived at her small downtown business, a cozy bookstore cafe, nestled between a dry cleaner and a florist. Harbor Pages, the wooden sign read, hand-painted in fading navy. The front window held a charming display of paperbacks, soy candles, and handwritten quotes on chalkboard stands. One read, "The truth will outlive the lies." Eli unlocked the door for her like he'd done dozens of times before. The familiar smell of roasted coffee and old paper wrapped around them. It felt good, grounding. Maya had almost forgotten how steady this place made her feel. She walked behind the counter and opened the safe beneath the register. Inside was the fireproof ledgerone she'd kept hidden even from Darius. She didn't trust software alone. Too many times, she'd seen system errors cover up someone's bad intentions. She flipped open the thick brown book and began scanning through the pages of handwritten expenses, orders, and deliveries. Everything was in line until she reached the last entry dated 2 weeks ago. Her eyes narrowed. There was a supplier listed that she hadn't worked with, Clifton Harbor Freight, alongside a charge of $8,920 marked miscellaneous bulk inventory. It wasn't her handwriting, and it wasn't in her system either. A ghost transaction. Maya's fingers froze on the page. "Eli," she said gently, "can you check the mail slot up front? See if anything came in while we were closed." The boy nodded and skipped off. She pulled out her phone and snapped a photo of the suspicious ledger page, then called Simone. It rang twice. "Ortega," came the crisp voice. "Detective, it's Maya. I just found something at my shop. A transaction for nearly $9,000 from a supplier I've never used. The handwriting's not mine." "You're at Harbor Pages now?" "Yes. Stay there. I'm 5 minutes away." Maya closed the ledger and tucked it under the counter. Her heart was racing again, but it wasn't panic, it was readiness. Eli came back with a yellow envelope. It was wedged behind the door. She opened it carefully. Inside was a printed manifest on glossy paper with a single name at the bottom, Darius Cole. The shipping address was to a warehouse on the outskirts of town she'd never heard of, Riverbend Industrial Park. The envelope also contained a photo. It showed a large black duffel bag half open, revealing rows of unmarked pill bottles, bundled bills, and a silver watch, Darius's watch. Simone walked in moments later with another agent, a tall man with broad shoulders and a stiff suit who introduced himself simply as Agent Knox. Maya handed over the envelope. "That was dropped off today, probably early this morning." Simone studied the manifest. "This location, Riverbend, we've been trying to get a warrant to search it, but we haven't had probable cause." Knox's voice was gravel. "This gives us that cause." Maya showed them the ledger entry. "It's all connected. He used my business as a dummy shell. Probably thought no one would look twice. Was anyone else here the day that entry was logged? Simone asked. Maya thought. Only Janissemi assistant. But she was off sick that week. I remember because I had to run the cafe side alone. That means someone came in after hours. Security footage? Knox asked. Maya walked over to the small office behind the cafe and turned on the monitor. The system was old, but reliable. She pulled up the date 2 weeks prior and scrolled to nighttime footage. There, at 11:52 p.m., the door creaked open. A shadow entered. He moved fast, familiar with the space. Maya's breath hitched as the man walked into frame. It was Darius. He wore gloves. He walked straight to the register, opened the safe, and pulled out a small binder. Then he placed another one inside the forged ledger. Maya stared. He knew where everything was. Simone hit pause. That's all we need. Agent Knox leaned over. We'll get the warrant expedited. Maya, thank you for keeping such detailed records. It's rare. As they left, Simone lingered. You just became the key witness. That means protection detail from here on. Maya shook her head. I don't want to feel like a prisoner. You won't, but you will be watched. For your sake and his. They drove back to Margaret's in an unmarked vehicle, this time followed by a second car. Maya watched through the rearview mirror as the trailing vehicle stayed close, deliberate. She hated how much space Darius still occupied in her life. That afternoon, she sat with Eli on the back porch, the boy curled up beside her with his sketch pad on his lap. He was drawing a lighthouse. Why a lighthouse? She asked softly. He shrugged. Because even when everything's dark, it still shines. Doesn't care who's looking. Maya blinked, then put an arm around him. He added a small figure at the base of the lighthouse. A woman with long hair. That's you, he whispered. You keep me from crashing. Maya felt her throat tighten, but she managed to keep her voice steady. You've been my light too, Eli. More than you know. That night, as the house settled and Margaret turned in early, Maya lay awake staring at the ceiling. She knew more was coming: court dates, depositions, maybe even media attention. But she wasn't the same woman who once looked at Darius and saw safety. Now she saw the truth, and she'd carry it forward. Tomorrow, they would raid the warehouse. Tonight, she'd rest like someone who no longer feared the dark. At precisely 5:02 a.m., the convoy rolled out under the last shreds of moonlight. Unmarked SUVs, a surveillance van, and a black Suburban with tinted windows weaved through Savannah's sleepy industrial district like a silent storm front. Simone Ortega sat in the front passenger seat, flipping through the final warrant paperwork, while Agent Knox drove with a tight jaw and eyes hard as gravel. In the back seat, Maya sat quietly, her hands folded. Eli's sketch of the lighthouse folded in her coat pocket like armor. No one spoke much. The Riverbend warehouse wasn't on any public map. It sat behind a chain of fake shipping offices, accessible only through an old gravel lot camouflaged by rusted-out trailers and forgotten pallets. But as they approached, the building emerged low, wide, windowless, quiet. Too quiet. This is it, Knox muttered. Simone spoke into her radio. All units in position. Stand by. From the van behind them, tactical agents emerged, bulletproof vests marked with Homeland Security and DEA patches. Simone turned to Maya. You stay in the vehicle. No exceptions. Maya nodded, clutching the lighthouse sketch a little tighter. Then the door slammed shut, and Simone was gone. The raid began like a storm hitting still water fast, loud, decisive. Officers breached the steel side entrance with a battering ram, shouting commands that echoed off the corrugated walls. Flashlights swept the dark interior. There was shouting, heavy boots on concrete, and then a sharp silence. Knox's voice cut over the radio. Clear. We've got something. Maya leaned forward, eyes narrowed through the windshield. 5 minutes later, Simone returned with her face unreadable. She opened the back door and gestured for Maya to come. What is it? You need to see it for yourself. Inside the warehouse, the temperature dropped like a breath held too long. The air smelled of oil and old metal. But beyond the loading area, the back chamber told another story, one of secrets hidden in plain sight. Rows of black duffel bags lined the walls, identical to the one in the photo Maya had received. Officers were already cataloging the contents. Unmarked pharmaceuticals, bundles of $100 bills, multiple burner phones, and file slots of them, labeled in code, some in Darius's handwriting. Then Maya saw Ida corner desk, and on it, a large digital ledger system. The screen was still on, time-stamped the night before, showing shipments tagged as low risk or high yield. Her name was on 3 of them, her cafe address, her business account. "He used me," she whispered. "Extensively," Simone said, voice tight. "But this is enough. We've already got 2 confirmed ties to trafficking networks that cross state lines. This is federal." Maya swallowed hard. "What about Darius? We have his last known location. He's on the move. But with what we found here, a federal arrest warrant is in effect. It's only a matter of time." Knox stepped forward, holding a file. "You may want this. It's labeled contingency. Has your name and Eli's." Maya opened it, her breath catching. Inside were surveillance photosure house, her shop, even Eli playing in the garden. There were scribbled notes. "Use the boy if she talks. Leverage, foster history. Don't let her leave." Maya's knees nearly buckled. Simone caught her. "I'm fine," Maya whispered. "I'm fine." Simone's voice softened. "We'll assign 2 agents to your property, round the clock. I'm putting Eli on the protective custody list. You're not alone, Maya. Not anymore." As the evidence was loaded into vans and the scene sealed off, Maya stepped back into the early morning light. The sky was lavender now, birds beginning to stir. She took one last look at the warehouse, so cold, so empty despite all it held. Back at Margaret's, the day unfolded with a strange kind of quiet. Margaret baked cornbread, like she did when storms were coming. Eli sat on the floor with a jigsaw puzzle, occasionally glancing at the front door. Maya changed the locks herself. That afternoon, Simone returned. "There's something else," she said, stepping into the kitchen. "We just got intel from our tech team. One of the burner phones we recovered had an outgoing message, time-stamped 5 hours before your wedding." Maya froze. Simone continued. "It was sent to an encrypted number. Our people cracked part of it. The message read, 'The woman suspects. Cut ties. Leverage the boy if needed. Delete after use.'" Maya's face drained of color. Simone's voice was gentle. "He was preparing to flee, and willing to use Eli if you made trouble." Maya sat slowly at the table, tears pressing at the corners of her eyes but refusing to fall. "I can't believe I once thought he was the safe choice." He wasn't your mistake," Simone said. "He was a master of illusion. The mistake would have been staying quiet." Later that evening, Margaret joined Maya on the porch, carrying 2 mugs of warm chamomile. "You ever feel like your heart's not just broken, but reassembled wrong?" Maya asked, staring out at the magnolia trees. Margaret chuckled softly. "That's every woman who's ever survived something, sweetheart. The trick is to let the cracks fill in with light." "Huh." Maya looked down at her mug. "He wanted to use my son, my home, my life, but he failed," Margaret said firmly. "And you're not just surviving this, you're fighting back." The phone rang just before sundown. Simone again. "We got him," she said. "He was trying to board a private flight out of Charleston. He's in custody now. And Maya, he asked for you." Maya's pulse jumped. "What?" "He said he wants to speak with you. Just once. We can arrange a secure visit, but only if you choose it." Maya was silent for a long moment. Then, "I'll think about it." That night, after Eli went to bed, Maya sat at the kitchen table and pulled out a notebook. She didn't write anything. She just stared at the blank page, thinking about what justice meant not just in the legal sense, but in the quiet, private ways that people reclaim their lives. She thought about Eli's drawing, about the woman standing next to the lighthouse, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to breathe. The storm had come, but the house still stood, and the light was still shining. The morning after Darius's arrest, the world outside moved on as if nothing had happened. Dogs barked, lawn sprinklers ticked in rhythmic arcs, and kids rode bicycles down the sidewalk like it was any ordinary summer day. But inside Maya's home, a stillness lingered, the kind that comes after a hurricane passes, and you're left counting the pieces still intact. Eli sat quietly at the kitchen table, legs swinging, spooning cereal absent-mindedly while his eyes remained fixed on a folded napkin he had scribbled on. Maya stood nearby, flipping pancakes she knew he wouldn't finish, her mind already halfway to the federal detention center where she had agreed against her better judgment to see Darius one last time. The call had come from Simone that morning. "He's not asking for a lawyer," Simone had said. "He says it's personal." Margaret wasn't thrilled. "You don't owe him anything, Maya," she had warned while buttoning her blouse. "Closure's a beautiful idea, but sometimes silence speaks louder." But Maya couldn't ignore it, not after everything. Not after the surveillance. Not after knowing her son's name had been written next to words like leverage and liability. She needed to look him in the eye and ask the question that had haunted her since the day he entered their lives. Was any of it real? The facility was housed in a converted Air Force base, gray and sterile, surrounded by fields of red clay and chain-link fences. As Maya walked past the security checkpoint, her heels echoing off linoleum, she tightened her grip on her handbag, which held nothing but a wallet, Idaho, and Eli's lighthouse drawing folded once again. Inside the visitation room, Darius sat behind a thick sheet of reinforced glass, looking remarkably composed. No shackles, no orange jumpsuit. He wore a navy button-down shirt, open at the collar, and his hair was neatly trimmed. But it was the eyes that gave him away, darting, calculating, masking something dark beneath their practiced charm. Maya took her seat on the other side of the glass, picking up the phone. "Why am I here?" Darius lifted the receiver, his voice smooth as ever. "You came. I didn't think you would. Don't flatter yourself." He offered a tight smile. "I wanted to explain. Then explain why you put my son in danger. Why you used my name, my cafe, my life to run whatever it is you were running. And don't you dare say it was for us." Darius leaned forward, voice lowering. "Because it was easy. Because you trusted me. Because you were the perfect cover clean, respected, loved." Maya blinked once. "That blunt? I never planned to hurt you," he continued. "But I needed access. I needed silence. And you were convenient." A knot twisted in her chest, but she held firm. So all of it, the dinners, the proposal, the fatherly advice to Ella, was that part of the plan too? He didn't answer immediately. "There's a difference between manipulation and affection," he said carefully. "Sometimes they overlap, spoken like a true con, spoken like someone who's already lost everything." Darius's smile faltered, and for a moment, something raw flickered beneath the surface. "I didn't expect the kid." He made it complicated. "Because he saw you, for what you were." Darius's jaw tightened. "He recorded us, didn't he?" Maya said nothing. He nodded slowly. "Smart kid." There was a long pause. Then Maya said softly, "He asked me if he was still my son, after the wedding." Darius looked up. "And what did you say?" "I told him yes, because love doesn't get erased by betrayal, but it does get redefined." He exhaled, and for the first time, his shoulders slumped slightly. "You're stronger than I thought." "No," Maya said. "I just have more to protect." She stood. "This is the last time we speak." As she walked away, she didn't turn back, not even when Darius said her name. That night, back home, Maya found Eli sitting on the porch, his sketchpad on his lap. He looked up as she approached. Was he mean? Maya sat beside him. He was honest, and that's what hurt most. Eli nodded, drawing two stick figures standing near a lighthouse. "I made you taller in this one." Maya smiled. "Thank you." He hesitated. "Are you sad?" "A little, but mostly, I'm tired." He reached over and held her hand. "You're still my mom, right?" "Always." In the days that followed, the community around them responded in quiet, powerful ways. Local patrons returned to the cafe, bringing friends and neighbors. Pastor Williams from the Baptist church dropped off 2 casseroles and an envelope with rent money, just in case. A retired cop offered to install a new security system for free. It was as if the town had seen what Maya had survived and decided to make sure she'd never stand alone again. But healing wasn't linear. At night, Maya still woke up at 3 a.m., heart pounding. She still heard the phrases from Darius's ledger echo in her mind. Delete after use. Leverage the boy. Cut ties. Simone, true to her word, stayed in touch. The investigation had widened, sweeping up 3 more collaborators and exposing a smuggling ring spanning 5 states. Darius had offered a full confession in exchange for leniency. It was denied. Meanwhile, Margaret had started planning a trip for the three of them to the coast. "You need salt in your lungs and sand between your toes," she said. "And Eli needs to see that lighthouse for real." One evening, Maya pulled Eli into the cafe's back room, where the safe was hidden behind a painting of a bayou. She opened it, pulled out the old adoption paperwork, and handed it to him. "What's this?" Eli asked. "It's your forever." He blinked up at her. "I thought I already was." "You are," she said, tears gathering in her eyes. "But I wanted you to know, officially, legally, emotionally, you're mine, no matter what." Eli grinned. "I know. And in that moment, with the hum of the espresso machine in the distance and the weight of truth no longer crushing her chest, Maya realized something profound. Justice hadn't come from the court, or the arrest, or even the confrontation. It had come from this right here, from choosing to rise, to protect, to love, even when every piece of her had been cracked open. Outside, the moon was rising over Savannah, bathing the porch in silver light. The world hadn't changed much, but Maya had, and sometimes that was all it took. It was early spring when Maya packed their suitcases. The air in Savannah was still brisk, but the azaleas were beginning to bloom, faint reminders that even after a harsh winter, color always returns. Margaret stood in the driveway, arms crossed, watching Maya lift the last bag into the trunk of her weathered SUV. "You sure you've got everything?" Margaret asked. Maya nodded. "Eli's books, snacks, the adoption papers, and the lighthouse journal." "Good." Margaret paused. "And your peace of mind?" Maya gave her a tired smile. "Working on it." Eli clambered into the back seat, clutching a sketch pad and the small portable cassette recorder Maya had gifted him the week before. "For documenting the journey," she had said, just like a reporter. They drove east along Highway 80, toward Tybee Island, where the Atlantic met the sky, and where the lighthouse Eli had drawn so many times stood tall. It was a quiet ride, filled with long silences and soft music humming through the speakers. Sam Cooke, Otis Redding, Nina Simone. Maya had created the playlist herself. It was soulful, soothing, and healing. As they neared the coast, the scent of salt water replaced pine, and the seagulls began to cut across the sky. Eli rolled down his window, letting the wind whip through his short curls. "Smells like freedom," he said. Maya laughed. "It smells like fish." Same thing," Eli replied with a shrug. They checked into a modest bed and breakfast owned by an elderly black couple named Ernest and Lillian, who welcomed them like family. Lillian had graying braids and a laugh that seemed to shake the entire porch, while Ernest, once a Navy cook, wore suspenders over a white shirt and served shrimp and grits with a side of stories. Eli was immediately taken with the place, exploring the garden, asking Ernest questions about the sea, and listening to old jazz records in the living room. But Maya had come for something deeper. She needed closure and clarity. On the second morning, Maya stood by the large bay window of their room, watching fog roll in from the water. She held the lighthouse journal in her hand, a leather-bound notebook, where Eli had drawn different versions of the structure over the past year. Some were battered by storm. Some stood shining in moonlight. One had flames in the distance. Another had shadows lurking at its base. All of them, however, had the same small figure standing at the topa buoy, arms wide, defiant and free. Eli joined her. "Can we go today?" Maya looked down at him. "Are you ready?" He nodded. "Are you?" "I think so." They arrived at the lighthouse just after noon. The fog had lifted, revealing a cobalt sky and the full stretch of the coastline. The tower itself rose from the edge of the island like a monument to resilience. Whitewashed walls, black-capped top, silent and solemn. As they climbed the spiraling iron staircase, Maya felt her breath catch not from exertion, but from memory. The last few months had left bruises on her soul, but this felt like healing in motion. Eli reached the top first. "It's even bigger than I thought," he said, peering through the railings. Maya joined him, hand resting on the railing, eyes scanning the sea. "Your drawings don't do it justice." Eli pulled out the cassette recorder. "Can I say something?" "Of course." He pressed record. "This is Eli William. I'm standing at the top of Tybee Lighthouse with my mom. Not my birth mom, my forever mom. A few months ago, we thought something was good when it wasn't. But that doesn't mean the whole world is bad. Sometimes the people who hurt you make you stronger. Sometimes what you lose makes room for what you really need. Maya's throat tightened. Did you write that? He shrugged. Kind of made it up. It's beautiful. They sat for a while, letting the wind pass through them like truth. Maya thought about Darius, how easily he had blended into their lives, how cunningly he had made his way into her heart. But he hadn't won. Not really, because here, at the top of the world, she sat beside the one person who had seen through the mask, who had chosen courage over comfort. Eli had saved them both. Later that night, after dinner on the porch with Ernest and Lillian, Maya tucked Eli into bed. The room was small but cozy, with pale blue walls and an old wooden dresser. She leaned down and kissed his forehead. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. Eli opened his eyes. "Even when I ruined the wedding?" "You didn't ruin it," she said. "You saved it, and you saved me." He looked at her for a moment. "Do you think he ever loved us?" "I think he loved the version of us that made him feel powerful. But that's not real love, baby. Real love doesn't manipulate. It protects. It stays." He nodded. "Then I'm glad he's gone." Maya turned off the light and sat in the chair by the window, staring out at the ocean. The waves moved with quiet determination, steady and endless. She thought of everything they had survived, of trust broken and trust rebuilt, of the moment Eli had walked down that aisle and changed everything. It was not just bravery, it was legacy. A moment that would echo through their lives, not as trauma, but as triumph. The next morning, Maya sat with Lillian over coffee. "You've got that look," Lillian said. "What look?" "The look of a woman who just buried her pain somewhere deep and came back with flowers in her hands." Maya chuckled. "That obvious?" Lillian leaned in. "You know what they say about lighthouses? They don't go out looking for ships to save. They just stand there, shining. That's what you are now." "A lighthouse?" Lillian smiled. "A damn bright one." And Maya believed her. Back in Savannah, life resumed, but something had shifted. The cafe reopened with a new sign designed by Elia Lighthouse etched into the wood, a tribute to clarity and strength. The locals embraced it. Tourists asked about the story. Maya never told the full version, only smiled and said, "It's about finding your way home." Simone came by one afternoon with a folder. "It's official. The charges are locked. He's going away for a long time." Maya nodded. "Good. You okay?" "I'm better than okay. I'm right." And that was enough. Months passed. Eli grew taller. Maya laughed more. And every time they passed the lighthouse journal hanging in the cafe, they remembered, justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers. But when it does, it can still move mountains. Autumn arrived like a quiet guest, uninvited but deeply welcome. In Savannah, that meant cooler breezes brushing through the moss-draped oaks and the smell of cinnamon and pecan in every cafe window. Maya had reopened the cafe fully now, under a new name, The Beacon. Locals embraced the change, some nodding knowingly at the lighthouse sign above the door, others just grateful for Maya's pecan pie and Eli's chalkboard art. But while life settled into a new rhythm, one thread remained unresolved: City Hall. That was where Darius's influence had begun to metastasize, infecting people, decisions, and budgets in ways most didn't fully grasp. And Maya wasn't ready to leave that thread hanging. One crisp Monday morning, she stood in front of the mirror wearing a navy blue blazer, simple gold earrings, and the same heels she had worn to her first charity gala 7 years ago. She looked at herself, not just as a mother or a survivor, but as a witness. She would testify. She owed it to Eli, and to herself. Simone picked her up at 9 o'clock sharp. "You ready for this?" Maya slid into the front seat, adjusting the stack of folders on her lap. "I've never been more ready." They drove in silence for a bit, the hum of tires on pavement filling the gaps. Finally, Simone spoke. "The prosecutor's going to ask you to walk through the recording, especially the shipment and the manipulation part. Are you okay revisiting that?" "I don't have to be okay with it," Maya said. "I just have to be clear." City Hall was abuzz. The hearing had drawn more attention than expected: local journalists, non-profit leaders, even a few citizens who had once supported Darius's initiatives. The room wasn't built for this kind of tension. Maya entered with her head high. She noticed one of Darius's former assistants avoid eye contact. Another council member, Judge Harris, gave her a slow, respectful nod. It was a silent apology for not seeing things sooner. The prosecutor, a middle-aged white woman named Clara Hastings, began calmly. She introduced Maya, thanked her for her civic work, and then directed her to the table near the front. Maya, could you walk us through the moment you realized something was wrong? Maya glanced at Simone once, then unfolded the first page of her written notes. Her voice was steady, measured. It was the morning of my wedding, she began. Eli, my son, had been acting quiet, withdrawn. I thought it was nerves. But later that day, he played me a recording he had taken that morning. A conversation between Darius and a woman I didn't recognize. The room held its breath. In that recording, Darius says, "She trusts me. That's her weakness." And then he laughs. A soft, cruel kind of laugh. Maya swallowed. He goes on to say the shipment doesn't need documentation as long as no one talks. He calls it just product, but there's no manifest, no tracking. And he refers to customs being taken care of. A murmur ran through the room. Clara asked, "And you hadn't suspected anything before?" Maya shook her head. He was charismatic. He worked in city development, always talking about job creation, economic growth. He used the language of change, but he never explained the numbers. He waved off questions. I trusted him because I believed in what I thought we were building. And the recording, did you submit it to authorities immediately? Maya nodded. Simone and I delivered it the day after the wedding. That's when the investigation began. Simone took the stand next, corroborating the timeline and detailing how the audio files were cross-verified with city procurement records. Then came a pause in the proceedings. Judge Harris requested a recess. Maya stepped outside, leaning against a column in the courtyard. Eli was waiting there, holding a thermos of hot chocolate. "You were brave in there," he said. Maya smiled. "You gave me the courage." They sat on a bench, watching the wind scatter red and orange leaves across the stone. "I drew another lighthouse," Eli said. "But this one has people inside it, a whole community. Some are scared, some are looking out, some are just waiting for light. That's exactly what this place needs," Maya murmured. When the hearing resumed, the prosecutor moved toward Darius's past financial statements. His attorney, young, sharp-suited, overly confident, objected several times, but the judge allowed most of the documents. The evidence was clear. Shipments labeled as renovation supplies had no receipts. Funds from community grants were being rerouted to shell corporations with board members that, under scrutiny, turned out to be former associates of Darius. The final piece was Eli's recording. The audio played through a mounted speaker, Darius's voice, calm and casual, talking about Maya as if she were an investment. "She's good optics. A single mother, survivor story, local hero. People love that crap, but it's still just business." When it ended, Maya didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She simply looked ahead. The courtroom was silent until Clara spoke. "Let the record show. This woman was not just manipulated, she was used as cover for illegal operations that endangered not only her livelihood but this entire city." A few weeks later, the formal charges were filed: fraud, conspiracy, smuggling, and obstruction. Darius didn't show up for the last hearing. Rumor had it he'd tried to flee but was intercepted at the airport. Maya returned to her cafe that afternoon to find a line out the door. Not for the pie, though that was still part of the draw, but for her, for what she stood for. An elderly black man with a cane and a Vietnam veteran pin on his jacket stepped forward and said, "My granddaughter listens to your story on the radio. She says you're the reason she wants to study law." Maya smiled, her eyes misty. "Then tell her to study hard. We need people like her." That evening, Maya and Eli sat on the porch. The sky was violet with dusk, and the lighthouse sketch now framed inside the cafe caught the final rays of sun. "Do you think we're safe now?" Eli asked. Maya looked out into the distance. "Not completely, but we're safer, and we're stronger." He leaned against her shoulder. "You think there'll be more bad people?" "Always," she said. "But now we know how to shine the light on them." And together, they watched the horizon. Quiet, steady, unbroken. It started with a letter. Not a typed one, not an email or text, but a handwritten envelope addressed in looping cursive to Maya William, owner of the Beacon Cafe. No return address, just a Savannah postmark. Inside was a single sheet of linen paper. On it, one sentence. Thank you for making me believe there's still justice left in this world. There was no signature, just the initials, RC. Maya read it 3 times before placing it in the small wooden box beneath the register, the same box where she now kept little tokens, a sketch from a child, a silver coin from a veteran, a pressed magnolia flower from a woman who'd cried after hugging her. It had been 3 weeks since Darius's arrest, 3 long, slow, healing weeks. The media had quieted down, but the effects of his downfall rippled through the community like stones dropped in still water. Every other day, someone came into the cafe with a story. A city permit that had once been mysteriously denied was now approved. A nonprofit suddenly received long-delayed funding. A grandmother from Garden City revealed her rent had been raised illegally under one of Darius's shell companies. The public hearings continued at City Hall. Maya wasn't required to attend anymore, but she went anyway, sat in the back, silently, like a sentinel bearing witness. Judge Harris now presided over each session with a quiet intensity, clearly intent on rooting out every piece of rot Darius had left behind. That morning, Maya had just returned from one of those hearings when she saw Eli in the cafe, huddled with Simone and a young woman in a sharp red pantsuit. The woman turned, her expression focused and kind, then extended a hand. "Miss William, it's an honor," she said. "I'm Cassidy Monroe. I'm running for city commissioner, and I'd like your help." Maya blinked. "My help?" Cassidy nodded. "Not an endorsement unless you want to, but I want your story told. I want people to know what silence almost cost this city, and I want you to speak at the Unity Forum this Friday." Simone chimed in. "She's the real deal, Maya. Grew up here, put herself through college. She's not another politician, she's a storm." Maya laughed softly, looking at Eli, who beamed. "What do you think, kid?" Eli shrugged with a grin. "I think it's time more people heard your voice, not just your pie." So that Friday, Maya stood behind a podium at the local community theater, the lights warm on her skin, the auditorium filled with teachers, janitors, veterans, retired nurses, single moms, and college students, people who'd been invisible under Darius's rule. She began not with facts or accusations, but with a memory. "I used to think safety was something you earned by keeping your head down," she said, "that if you were quiet, polite, and hard-working, the world would protect you. But silence didn't keep me safe. It nearly destroyed everything I loved." The room quieted into a hush. "I trusted the wrong man," she continued, "because I believed in the dream he sold. A dream of growth, justice, opportunity. But it was hollow. It was a smokescreen for profit and control. And when that illusion shattered, it was my son who held up the truth. A little boy with nothing but a recording and a heart full of courage." She paused, letting the emotions settle. "I'm not here to tell you who to vote for," she said. "I'm here to tell you that silence has a cost. That justice, real justice, isn't a courtroom. It's a community that refuses to look away." When she stepped off the stage, the applause was thunderous. Cassidy hugged her, nearly in tears. Simone kissed her on the cheek and whispered, "I think your voice just changed this whole damn election." Later that week, the Beacon Cafe received a donation envelope from an anonymous donor, $5,000, with a note, "To ensure your light never dims." Maya used it to start a new initiative, free business classes for single parents and survivors of abuse. Eli insisted on designing the flyers himself, sketching lighthouses with open doors and coffee mugs floating in the sea. One of the first participants was a woman named Trina, 42, recovering from an abusive marriage, mother of 2. Her voice was quiet, but her eyes carried storms. On her first day, she said, "I heard you on the radio, Maya, and I thought if she can stand up, maybe I can too." That night, Maya found herself sitting alone in the kitchen, a cup of peppermint tea cooling in her hands. The window was open, letting in the Georgia breeze. The lighthouse drawing above her sink, the one Eli had framed for her birthday, caught the moonlight. She thought about the ripple effect, about how one boy's courage had shattered a lie, about how a cafe had become a haven, about how a city was slowly, painfully, becoming honest. And she thought about Darius, about how charm could hide rot, how power, if unchecked, could shape the lives of people who never saw it coming. She didn't feel hatred toward him anymore, just a solemn resolve. Eli walked into the kitchen, barefoot and sleepy. "Mom?" "Yeah, baby?" He pointed toward the front window. There's someone on the porch. Maya tensed slightly, stood, and moved toward the door. But when she opened it, what she found made her breath hitch. It was Mrs. Callahan, an elderly woman from the neighborhood, who hadn't spoken to Maya in months, not since the rumors about Darius first started. She held out a covered pie dish, trembling. "I owe you an apology," she said. "I judged you, believed what I read. I forgot that truth takes time to reveal itself." Maya took the pie gently. "Thank you, ma'am. You didn't have to." "I did," Mrs. Callahan said, "because it's what decent folks do when they've been wrong." As she turned to leave, she looked back. "You're raising that boy right, Maya. He's gonna build a better world." Back inside, Eli asked, "What kind of pie is it?" "Looks like apple," Maya said. Eli grinned. "We should save it for Trina's graduation." Maya smiled. "We will." And then she sat beside her son, her hand gently brushing his curls, her heart full not of anger or regret but of something deeper. Hope, because the storm had passed, but the lighthouse was still shining. The sun broke over Savannah with a golden softness, casting long beams through the Spanish moss hanging from the oaks. It was the kind of morning that made you believe the world could begin again. Maya stood by the window in her modest home, sipping coffee from a chipped mug that read, "Beacon of Hope." The phrase used to feel like a dream, something people said when they had no idea what real storms looked like. But now it felt earned, carved into the grain of her life by fire, betrayal, and the unshakable love of a child. Eli walked in quietly, dressed in a white button-down and pressed slacks. He was still fixing his collar, but something in his expression had shifted. Older, maybe, wiser. He carried himself like someone who had stood in the middle of the storm and learned to keep his footing. "You ready, kid?" Maya asked. Eli nodded. "Yeah, are you?" She smiled softly. "I think so." They were heading to the community center, where a ceremony had been planned, not the wedding that was supposed to be, but something else entirely. Something more real, more powerful. It was Simone's idea. "Girl, the city already reserved the space," she had said, days earlier. "Why let it go to waste? Use it. Reclaim it. Make it yours again." And so, instead of wedding vows and champagne, the hall would host what Maya and Simone now called the Restoration Gathering, an open mic, a music set, a potluck, and a public thank you to everyone who had helped Maya survive and rebuild. A living declaration that Maya William would not be defined by a man who lied, but by a community that stood up. The guest list had grown. Teachers, mechanics, grandmothers, baristas, cops, social workers, and even a retired judge. No longer whispers and side eyes, just open arms. As they pulled up to the community hall, Eli took Maya's hand. "You know," he said, "I never imagined I'd stop feeling afraid in this city." Maya looked at him with a softness that only mothers know. And yet, here you are. The moment they entered, the room broke into applause. No spotlight, no grand entrance. Just a ripple of love so tangible it made Maya's knees tremble. Cassidy Monroe was already at the front, chatting with a few older men from the Veterans Association. She spotted Maya and waved her over. "I saved you a moment at the mic," she said. "You don't have to speak, but if you want to, the room is yours." Maya nodded. "Thank you, but there's someone who needs to speak first." She turned to Eli, who froze like a deer in headlights. "What? No way, Mom." You're the one who saved me," Maya said, voice low but firm. "Saved us. That voice of yours it shook mountains, and you didn't even know it." Cassidy gently guided him to the side of the stage. Eli stood there, fidgeting with the cuffs of his sleeves as the audience quieted. Then he began. "I don't know much about speeches," he said, "but I know what it feels like when someone you love turns out to be dangerous. I know what it's like to keep a secret, to feel like no one would believe you because you're just a kid." He paused. "But I also know what it's like when someone listens, when they believe you, when they choose truth over comfort." He glanced at Maya. "My mom did that. She listened. And she didn't just protect me. She stood up. And because she did, all of you did too. So, thank you for giving us a second chance, for giving her back her name." Silence, then applause, and then cheers. Maya stepped up next. She didn't have a speech prepared, didn't need one. She simply spoke. "We're not here to talk about Darius," she said. "We're here because community saved us, because silence didn't get the last word, because my son taught me that sometimes the smallest voice is the one that changes everything." She looked around the room. "This isn't a wedding," she said, "but in a way, it's a beginning, a marriage to the truth, a vow to never ignore the quiet voices again." After the applause died down, music played soft jazz from a local band that Eli had found online. Tables were filled with potluck dishes. Someone brought collard greens, another brought peach cobbler. Maya brought her famous pecan pie. Then, one by one, people stood and shared. A school janitor who'd been denied insurance by a company tied to Darius. A young teacher who spoke about finally feeling safe reporting harassment. A retired Marine who thanked Maya for restoring his belief in justice. And then, out of the back of the room, someone stood up that Maya didn't expect. Judge Harris. He walked slowly toward the front, clearing his throat. "I don't often speak outside the bench," he said, "but I need to say this. What Maya, William, and her son did it wasn't just brave. It was catalytic. The kind of truth that forces institutions to self-correct." He turned to Maya. "You reminded us all that no one is too small to matter, that justice belongs to those willing to stand alone, until they're not alone anymore." When he sat back down, Simone whispered, "Girl, you better write a book or run for office or something." Maya just laughed and poured herself a glass of sweet tea. Later that evening, after the room had emptied and the tables had been cleared, Maya sat with Eli on the front steps of the hall. The air was warm, fragrant with magnolia and baked sugar. "I used to think I was saving you," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Eli looked at her. "And? I think maybe you were saving me the whole time." They sat in silence for a long while, shoulder to shoulder. Then, just as the streetlights flickered on, a sleek black sedan pulled up across the street. A woman in a gray blazer stepped out and approached slowly. "Miss William?" she asked, holding out a badge. "I'm Special Agent Renee Caldwell with the Department of Homeland Security." Maya's stomach tightened. "I'm not here about you," the agent said quickly, "but I'd like to talk about your ex-fiancé and some of his ties to an interstate smuggling network. You may have uncovered something much bigger than you realize." Maya blinked. "I'm listening," she said, and as they spoke under the warm Savannah night, with Eli leaning against her side, Maya felt it again, that flicker of hope, because the story wasn't over. It had just turned another page.